On April 25th, 1986, thousands of people in the Soviet Union went to sleep without knowing that the world around them was about to change forever. Children laughed in the streets of Pripyat. Couples watched television in their apartments. Workers finished late shifts and walked home under the cold Ukrainian night sky. Everything looked normal, peaceful, ordinary. But inside reactor number 4 of the Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant, something was already going terribly wrong. And within the next 24 hours, one of the worst disasters in human history would begin. What makes the story even more terrifying is that many of the people involved knew something dangerous was happening. But no one imagined it could end like this. Because according to Soviet engineers, a nuclear reactor like our BMK could not explode. It was considered impossible. And yet, only hours later, the sky itself would burn blue above Chernobyl. Radiation would spread across Europe. Entire cities would be abandoned forever, and thousands of people would unknowingly walk directly into invisible death. To understand how this nightmare began, we need to go back to the final 24 hours before the explosion. April 25th started like any other day at the power plant. The Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant was one of the largest in the Soviet Union. It symbolized technological pride. Soviet newspapers described nuclear energy as the future of humanity. Safe, powerful, limitless. Workers at the plant were respected. Many lived in the nearby city of Pripyat, a modern Soviet city built specifically for plant employees and their families. Pripyat was young, clean, optimistic. The average age was only 26 years old. Parks were full of children. Schools were crowded. New apartment buildings rose everywhere. There was even an amusement park preparing for its grand opening in just a few days. No one knew they would never use it. That morning, engineers at Reactor 4 prepared for a routine safety test. The goal sounded simple. In case of power loss, they wanted to know if the spinning turbine could temporarily provide enough electricity to keep cooling pumps running before backup generators activated. Similar tests had failed before. This time, officials wanted results. But almost immediately, problems began. The reactor's power needed to be reduced for the experiment. However, due to electricity demands from Kiev, plant management delayed the procedure for several hours. Reactor 4 remained operating at medium power far longer than planned. That delay would become one of the most important moments in the disaster. Because nuclear reactors are extremely sensitive systems, even small changes can create dangerous conditions. As evening approached, the exhausted day shift handed operations over to the night crew. Many of them were less experienced with the test. Some had little understanding of the reactor's unstable behavior at low power levels. Yet the experiment continued anyway. Inside the control room, operators slowly lowered the reactor's power. But then something unexpected happened. The power dropped too fast. Far too fast. The reactor nearly shut down completely. Panic spread among the operators. A shutdown would mean failure. Supervisors demanded they recover power quickly, so the crew made a series of decisions that would later become infamous. Automatic safety systems were disabled. Emergency protections were turned off. Control rods designed to stabilize the reactor were removed far beyond safe operating limits. One by one, the layers of protection disappeared. The reactor became increasingly unstable. But the operators either did not fully understand the danger or believed the reactor could still be controlled. After midnight, Reactor 4 entered conditions no nuclear reactor should ever experience. And still, the experiment continued. At 1:23 a.m., the test finally began. Steam to the turbines was cut. Pumps slowed down. Power fluctuations surged through the reactor core. Inside the reactor, an uncontrollable chain reaction started building. Operators noticed alarms. Warning signals flashed across the control panels. But by then, events were moving too fast. One engineer pressed the AZ-5 emergency shutdown button. It should have stopped everything instantly. Instead, it triggered catastrophe. Due to a fatal design flaw inside the RBMK reactor, the control rods initially increased reactivity instead of decreasing it. In the span of seconds, the reactor's power skyrocketed beyond imaginable levels. Fuel channels ruptured. Steam pressure exploded upward. Then came the first explosion. It was powerful enough to tear apart the 1,000-ton steel plate covering the reactor. Workers inside the building heard a massive shock wave. Walls shook violently. Concrete cracked. But the worst was still coming. Seconds later, a second explosion ripped through Reactor 4. This time, the reactor core itself was exposed. You cannot feel it entering your body. And that made Chernobyl especially terrifying. Invisible particles were already contaminating the city. Inside apartments, schools, hospitals, playgrounds. Yet life continued almost normally for hours. At the hospital, doctors struggled to understand what was happening. Firefighters arrived with severe burns, unlike anything medical staff had seen before. Skin darkened rapidly. Faces swelled. Some victims became too weak to stand. But Soviet authorities still avoided using the word radiation. Even in Moscow, confusion spread through the government. Reports from Chernobyl sounded unbelievable. A reactor explosion was considered impossible by Soviet doctrine. Officials hesitated, delayed decisions, argued over information, and during every hour of delay, radioactive material continued pouring into the atmosphere. By the morning of April 26th, radiation levels around the plant had become catastrophic. Yet many radiation meters maxed out at low levels, giving false readings that underestimated the danger. Some supervisors believed the situation was manageable, simply because their instruments could not measure anything higher. Helicopter crews began flying directly above the open reactor to drop sand, lead, and boron into the burning core. Many pilots received massive radiation doses during these missions. Still, they continued flying. Soviet authorities now faced an impossible problem. Entire sections of Ukraine and Belarus were becoming contaminated, but evacuating cities would expose the scale of the disaster to the world. For almost 36 hours after the explosion, Pripyat remained populated. Imagine that. Tens of thousands of people living normally beside an open nuclear reactor. Children eating breakfast. Families opening windows. Citizens walking outside beneath radioactive dust falling from the sky like invisible snow. Then came the announcement. Buses entered the city. Officials informed residents they would be temporarily evacuated. People were told to bring documents, essential items, and enough supplies for only a few days. Most believed they would return soon. They left pets behind. Clothes remained hanging in apartments. Toys stayed on bedroom floors. Food sat on kitchen tables. Entire lives frozen in time. But they would never return. Pripyat became a ghost city almost overnight. And the disaster was only beginning. Across Europe, radiation alarms started triggering in other countries. At first, Soviet officials denied everything. But eventually, the truth became impossible to hide. Chernobyl released massive amounts of radioactive material into the environment. Forests died. Villages were abandoned. Thousands of square kilometers became contaminated, and the human cost remains debated even today. Some estimate thousands died. Others believe the long-term death toll may be far higher due to cancer and radiation exposure over decades. But beyond the numbers lies something deeper. Chernobyl exposed the danger of secrecy, arrogance, and human error. It showed how systems built on fear and denial can turn small mistakes into global catastrophes. Because the explosion itself was not caused by a single person. It was the result of design flaws, political pressure, poor communication, exhausted workers, and a culture where admitting problems was dangerous. And perhaps that is why the story still fascinates people decades later. Because Chernobyl was not simply a nuclear accident. It was a warning. A reminder that human technology can become uncontrollable when pride replaces honesty. Today, nature slowly reclaims the abandoned city of Pripyat. Trees grow through cracked streets. Ferris wheels rust silently in empty amusement parks. Apartment buildings decay beneath rain and snow. Yet radiation still lingers in the soil. Invisible, silent, waiting. Some scientists say parts of the exclusion zone may remain dangerous for thousands of years. Think about that. An event lasting only seconds permanently changed the land for longer than most civilizations have existed. And even now, many mysteries remain. Some workers never fully explained their decisions that night. Some records disappeared. Some witnesses contradicted each other for years. But one fact is undeniable. During the final 24 hours before the explosion, countless opportunities existed to stop the disaster. Different choices, different decisions, different warnings, and history might have changed forever. But instead, on a cold April night in 1986, humanity witnessed one of the most terrifying moments of the modern age. A moment when a machine built to provide energy transformed into a silent weapon against its own people. And perhaps the scariest part of all is this. Chernobyl did not happen because of monsters. It happened because ordinary people believed everything was under control. Until suddenly, it wasn't.